Good afternoon, everyone. Let's talk about crop losses that have made it into the media for a millisecond and then disappeared. Not only the entire Georgia peach crop, minimum 75% loss, but all through the southeast United States. Chickpea crop just north of Montana into Saskatchewan looking parched, to say the least. Spring wheat drought, that's an understatement. And a little bit of hail in Spain, and we'll mix that with a few more losses you didn't hear about. And while you're watching the channel, please remember to subscribe to Adapt 2030. Just a little recap. Remember, the spring was unusually warm, and then those Arctic cold fronts rolled down for about 6 weeks after the fruit trees, the flowers had all budded out. And it's been a total loss, especially for the peaches. This is the size of the peaches coming off the trees. And to say that's a crop loss disaster is kind of downplaying the situation. Yeah, sure, there's economic losses, and they're looking at 80% loss of the entire crop. But when we look at this source of food and fruit, and you can see the effect of the colder weather has on the yield of a crop. Imagine what the wheat's going to be like in Kansas, that was decimated by the blizzard, the cold that just froze out the corn crop in North Dakota, all those unusually cold temperatures in Canada as well affecting the crops with the drought. It's all going to start adding up, and it is right now. And those droughts in Heilongjiang in China. But back to the Georgia peaches, $20 for peaches are now wholesaling at $35. That's nearly doubling the price. Now what happens when this does the same with the wheat and the chickpeas at the end of the year, along with the barley? You know, your food prices are going to go straight up. And then they quote farmers as saying, there's no peaches worth picking. And you just saw that photo with the what looked like marble-sized peach. And they call it a whammy of unexpected weather, but they wouldn't touch a grand solar minimum intensification with a 10-foot pole, destroying most of the peach crop in the southeast U.S. They're just focusing on Georgia. They forgot about the record floods in Arkansas that took out 1/4 of the rice crop. So they stayed focused on the Georgia peach crop. But the fruit across the U.S. and Europe was just a disaster this year. Those of you in the stores, I'm sure you're seeing higher prices in front of your very eyes. Jumping over to Europe, let's look at the hail. These atmospheric compression events are absolutely starting to multiply across this planet, as well as the severity and intensity keeps increasing as well. Now we're looking at this frost damage in North Dakota, South Dakota, but remember, this was just a day before July, where the corn actually froze on the stalks 3 days before the beginning of July. Extremely cold, and at the same time, drought conditions. Taking a look at North Dakota here, the frost damage, and you can get a gauge. Those plants, they're not going to really recover. If they do, they're going to look something very similar to this. Thanks, Lee, for taking the images and putting them up. I do appreciate it. That's incredible work right there, that we can really get a visual on what the conditions are like in the recovery of these plants. Also, the corn, studded growth. Absolutely. And then we get into the spring wheat, which was driven up all-time record prices, up 30% over the last 3 months. And they're still in a drought through that whole western part of the United States, extending up into Canada, because weather just doesn't know there's a border on a continent. Chickpeas, parched, to say the least. That yield's going to be incredibly low. And a quick shout out to Outdoor MC. Thanks for reposting my video here of the Dakotas having record cold temperatures, 15, 20 below normal temperatures, but the news wouldn't even touch it. They were focused on 1 degree over somewhere in the East Coast when I did that video. But see how dry those plants are? And it was slammed with cold. Then we get into Ohio. Now, I had some reports from Indiana growers saying that their corn is actually doing incredibly well this year, but then there's other areas of Indiana that are absolutely not coming in anywhere close to being harvestable when we get up into the latter part of the season. And that old saying, knee high by the 4th of July, please remember that's for a horse, not a human. And then look how small these plants are at the moment coming up. And then the hail damage that's coming down across with the ferocious winds. And when you see scenes like this in the farming communities across the United States where it's not mega drought, it's mega flood, and we start to copy and paste these same situations and same scenarios, doesn't matter if you're over in Asia, it's the same conditions. Australia's been pelted with exceptionally cold, record cold, beginning to their winter right now. All-time records for cold being broken in the western part of Australia, but heat records being broken in the east. It shows that diametric opposite, as well as New Zealand pounded with record cold, cut off with snow already. But this is just a glimpse of what's out there in the media that they only focus on for milliseconds, really, or they don't even cover it. And all I can possibly say is our food prices are going up at the end of the year. And I do thank you for watching. I hope it gives you some heads up that you're going to need to start getting food right now while you can, while it's cheaper. Just as an example, Food for Liberty, they have hormone-free USDA non-fat milk powder. Now this is long-term food storage here. Each of these bags is over 2 pounds of milk powder, as well as seed sprouting packs and other long-term food storage seeds that are edible. You can sprout them, you can plant them, you can eat them. But whatever you buy today is absolutely going to be cheaper than what you buy at the end of the year in December.